Welcome, beautiful Paris Saint-Germain family. In today's video, I'll be answering a question. Should Hansi Flick change his tactics? I like to use these kinds of questions and find a full answer to them. So, obviously, after the Club Brugge game, there's a lot of tweets from Barca fans regarding Hansi Flick, and there were a lot of questions in the press conference to Hansi Flick as well regarding if he should change his tactics or not. This was the video.
Or you are considering changing the way you play to protect yourself better?
Come on, I answered it, two questions before. Sorry, no, it's not. No, it's not the way to change. Okay, it's not like that. How we want to play. We are Barca, okay, and we want to play. Our football is a style to be active and have intensity. So this is against the ball, but also with the ball. And at the moment. In some moments, we miss it.
He also said this: we can drop into a low block or stick to our philosophy and improve. When there's no intensity, you have no options in the Champions League. We can talk about changing everything, but I'm not coached to change like that. We want to play to our DNA. We don't want to defend in a low block and win 1-0 on transition. 3-3 isn't the best result, but we equalized after every goal, and that's one positive. And there's this huge stat right here. Barca have scored the most Champions League goals and conceded the joint most since Hansi Flick took charge of FC Barcelona, which shows you both sides of Hansi Flick football. They've conceded the joint most, which is genuinely scary from a bad perspective, but they've also scored the most goals, which should be a great thing for FC Barcelona. And I think this stat right here just shows Hansi Flick football. We will outscore the opponent. That's what Hansi Flick football has always been about. So now let's come to the question. Should Hansi Flick change his tactics? As we saw from his press conference and interview, he clearly disagrees with that. So now let's take a look. What is the reason FC Barcelona has been struggling, and why is a lot of people blaming Hansi Flick tactics for it? We have these pictures right here from the Rayo Vallecano FC Barcelona game. You see Pizzi, and this is something a lot of La Liga teams towards the end of last season and definitely in the beginning of this season, and not just La Liga teams, we saw Club Brugge do the same in the Champions League as well, abusing FC Barcelona and their high line. And another thing is the offside trap. I think that's something a lot of people have to be able to differentiate between Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern München, City, Liverpool, or maybe not Arsenal. Most football teams, most big football teams play with a high line. So that doesn't differentiate between them and other teams. Obviously, Barca has the most satanic high line, but that's still calm. For me, it's always been the offside trap. Because if you go back to Hansi Flick during Bayern München, when they won the treble, they didn't play offside trap. They played the high line, but they didn't play offside trap. Why do you usually play an offside trap? It's when you don't trust your defenders. And I think Hansi Flick does not trust the FC Barcelona defenders to defend. Instead, using the offside trap, because then they don't have to defend. But as we can clearly see, teams have been finding out Hansi Flick's offside trap and tactics. Ball in behind. And one thing a lot of people have to understand with the opportunities FC Barcelona face when they have a high line with an offside trap is that the Hansi Flick football, basically, you want to compromise the entire pitch into the opponent's pitch. This is where everything happens. You have the ball, the opposition have the ball, everything happens in this area. So you want to press high and have a high line with an offside trap. So you want to compromise the pitch into a small space like this. So as you understood, to have a functioning high line with an offside trap, you need to have a functioning press. And that has been FC Barcelona's biggest problem this season. Pedri talked about it, Flick talked about it, and many Barca fans have been talking about it. The press at Barca has not been good enough. Look at here. Yes, everyone looks at Pizzi, everyone looks at the run he makes, but look at this player. He has all the time in the world to put this ball in behind and not being pressed. Once again, this is more due to the offside trap. Koundé follows his winger right here and makes him onside so we can get the ball back. Another dangerous chance here for Rayo Vallecano. And here's another one. Look at this midfielder. Not pressed at all. And this is the main difference between FC Barcelona this season so far and FC Barcelona last season off the ball. Barca are not pressing anywhere close to how they were pressing last season. They're probably the best pressing team in the world alongside Paris Saint-Germain, but they're not pressing that well. So the issue isn't even the runners in behind. It's this. The pressing is not being made. The ball gets played in behind, and another dangerous opportunity. And once again, I want to talk about the offside trap because As I said, most big teams have a high line, so that clearly isn't the big problem. And this was from the Inter FC Barcelona first leg game. Right here, Dani Olmo stupidly loses the ball, but very tightly pressed by potentially 3 Inter Milan players. And Barca, instead of defending and trying to win the ball, they immediately go for an offside trap. And Dumfries just makes an easy run, which makes it extremely easy for any opponent to score versus Barca. And that was probably the main problem in the Inter Milan league. Inter Milan scored 7 goals, Barca scored 6. But if you look at Barca's goals, they were hard-fought goals. You know, a lot of ability had to put in. They had to push and push to get those goals. Whilst Inter Milan, their goals were so easy. In the first leg, 2 corner kicks and a kickoff glitch. In the second leg, penalty due to the offside trap, mistake here due to the offside trap, and then the third goal, just clueless defending and pushing up way too high from FC Barcelona. So once again, it's the offside trap. Because here, it's not a high line issue. It's an offside trap. And Inter Milan, fair play to them, they were well prepared to play against FC Barcelona. Here's some stats from FC Barcelona's pressing so far. Pressing starting distance. So how high up are you pressing? Which is really crucial if you want to play a high line with an offside trap. FC Barcelona are 23rd in the Champions League, I believe, out of 36 teams, which is a horrible number. Unfortunately, on the website, Opta, I couldn't find Barca's pressing numbers from last season to compare to this season, which is obviously a problem. Pressing, basically winning the ball due to press, that ends in a shot, only 16th. And I'm very certain that FC Barcelona were dominating these numbers in the UEFA Champions League last season. And we can clearly see that the problem is not just the high line and offside trap, because Barca employed the high line and offside trap last season, but they were not this bad. Even last season when Barcelona were so good, I still had question marks about the offside trap and the full out on football from Hansi Flick's FC Barcelona. But this season, why they're so much worse, it's not really that. It feels like they're using it as a scapegoat to go at Hansi Flick. Shots inside of the box from the opponent is 75%. 75% from the shots that FC Barcelona concede is inside the box, which is the 5th worst in the UEFA Champions League so far this season. It's been way too easy for opponents to create chance against this FC Barcelona side. Right here we have the stats only in the league. Barca last season to Barca this season. The pink one is Barca last season, the blue one is Barca this season. So you can see that possession, but Barca basically the same as last season, attacking basically the same, even goals basically the same. But here comes the differences. Counters. FC Barcelona is not frightening the opponent, because that's what counter-attacking football is. When you are really good at counter-attacking football, it tells the opponent, don't leave any space behind. Sit back. Don't counter yourself, because you will be countered back. But Barca's counter hasn't been close to last season. Defending. Barca hasn't been able to defend as well as last season. And even pressing has gone down a little bit in the league strictly. The big misses for Barca this season has been Rafinha and Lewandowski. Because one thing with Hansi Flick football is we outscore you. You can score 5 goals. We'll score 6, just like Luis Enrique said after the remontada. And I think that has been a huge problem for FC Barcelona. They're not being able to take the lead. They're not being able to score those important goals that FC Barcelona need to then be able to defend in the way that they want to defend. Instead, the opponent scores first and Barca got to react. It was the same thing versus Club Brugge. Club Brugge took the lead 3 different times, just like Inter. Barca was only up versus Inter in those 7 minutes between Rafinha's goal and Acerbi's goal during the entire 2-legged tie, which was a huge problem. That's Hansi Flick football. If the attack is bad, the defense will look even worse. And obviously, moving into more of the defense, Juan Garcia, despite being here for a very short time, has been extremely impactful. 7 games, 5 goals conceded with Juan Garcia, a 0.7 ratio. But without him, 8 games, 15 goals conceded, 1.8 ratio. That's nearly double the amount. And this really isn't to cook Szczesny, because Szczesny, even in games where he's conceded a lot of goals, he's still been good. And we saw Szczesny's level last season. He's obviously not playing at the same level, but that should tell you that when Juan Garcia eventually comes back, Barcelona are going to look even better from the goalkeeping position and even from a defensive position better than last season. Inigo Martinez. losing out on him, your best defender last season, and not replacing him was obviously a huge mistake from FC Barcelona. And then we take a look at these 4 players. These are 4 of Barca's best players from last season that haven't been as good as last season. Some of them have been suffering from injuries like Lamine Yamal and Dani Olmo, but these 4 players haven't been performing at the level they should be performing at like last season. And then there's the over-reliance on Pedri. Pedri just got injured due to the over-reliance. And he's been superb so far this season for Barca. But Pedri can't do it all alone on himself. So that's a valid excuse. It's not just those players. Other players have been injured as well. Gavi has been injured. Bernal just came back from injury. And some other players have also been injured. Goal difference. FC Barcelona last season in all competitions. They scored 174 goals, conceded 73. 101 in goal difference. And goal difference is really crucial to look at Flick football, because some teams you look at their defensive numbers, some teams you look at their offensive numbers, but when it comes to Hansi Flick football, because it's all about outscoring the opponent, you have to look at the goal difference. Very healthy goal differences from FC Barcelona, and this was in the UEFA Champions League. Scored 44, conceded 24, which is disgusting, by the way. 20 goal difference, still a good goal difference. But now let's take a look at this season. In all competitions, scored 40 goals, conceded 20. Only a 20 plus in goal difference. And in the UCL, 12 goals scored, 7 goals conceded, only a 5 goal difference. We can clearly see that the attack being worse due to underperformance and due to missing players like Lewandowski and Rafinha and Yamal at some points of the season has even affected the defensive part. So now let's talk about Hansi Flick and answer the question after going through all of this. Does Hansi Flick need to change his tactics? Yes or no? So, the simple answer is adjustments are needed. Why? Because teams are finding ways to play against Hansi Flick football. Hansi Flick can still play his, German football, whatever the football that Hansi Flick wants to play. He can still play it, but he has to make adjustments. I'm not saying change completely, absolutely no. As he said in his press conference, I don't want to go and win 1-0 and play low block. That's not our DNA. And people are telling Flick to change his DNA, but I'm not telling Flick to change his DNA. Why? Because it was Flick's DNA that got FC Barcelona back to winning stuff. It was Flick's football that won FC Barcelona the Copa del Rey, Spanish Super Cup La Liga, and reaching the Champions League semi-final for the first time in 2019. It feels a lot of people have an issue with recency bias. They're forgetting everything Hansi Flick has done for FC Barcelona in such a short amount of time, and with basically no help. The only signing he's made is Dani Olmo and Juan Garcia in 2 seasons at FC Barcelona. He basically needs more help at the club. That's what he needs. And as we've seen, Barca has been riddled with so many injuries so far this season. And one thing with Hansi Flick as well is he plays high-intensity football, which means that when the football is not intense, as he talked about in the beginning of the press conference, the football isn't the same. When they're not playing with the highest intensity in the Champions League, there's no point in playing the UEFA Champions League. And a bit similar to Paris Saint-Germain so far this season, I think Barca will be able to reach higher intensity levels towards the end of the season, maybe starting from February and so on, and we'll see FC Barcelona performing similar to last season. I feel like Flick has been a little bit of a scapegoat from the FC Barcelona page, and I understand he's the manager. I think he is the first person that should take criticism for FC Barcelona defeats and problems and so on, and I definitely think that his football needs to be adjusted. You cannot play in the way that you want to play all the time. I said that after the Inter tie. I'm still shocked how FC Barcelona lost those 2 legs versus Inter, because they should not have lost. It was that simple. So to answer the question, I don't think Hansi Flick has to change his DNA, but he has to make some adjustments. But again, he's playing the same football that he played last season. The same football that made Barca fans happy. The same football that made Barca fans celebrate all of those trophies. And Flick believes if they play that football, they will compete in all competitions just like they did last season. But the issue is they're having to wait to be able to play that kind of football. They're having to wait for all of their best players to come back into full fitness. They're having to wait for the players to come back to full intensity. And this is not just a Barca problem or a PSG problem or some other club's problem. This will soon become a worldwide problem where the players just play too many games, and they will start treating August until December as a preseason, because it technically is somewhat of a preseason. season. Nothing is determined in the first 6 months, 5 months of the season. It's all about the later stages of the season. That's something I even learned from last season, where we're horrible in that beginning of the season, but we stayed afloat. We stayed alive. And that's the important thing from Barca. They've collected 7 points from 12 Champions League games. Should be doing a little bit better, especially beating Club Brugge. And then obviously in La Liga, I think they're 5 points behind Real Madrid. So I think Barca need to see this season so far as a survival. And just stop hating on Flick as much as you guys are doing, because I think every person knows adjustments are needed. Maybe fully removing the offside trap. But why FC Barcelona are not playing to the levels they're playing last season is because of missing players, and the intensity levels are not there. As we clearly saw, the pressing is not as well, and that will make the defensive part, the high line, the offside trap, even more vulnerable than he has ever been. So to fully answer the question, Flick should not change his tactics, but he should make adjustments. But that's not the main reason why FC Barcelona are struggling. Quite the opposite is due to multiple reasons. And I think FC Barcelona should be grateful for everything Flick has done, and should be hyped and excited for Barca to be back. That's been it from my boy PSG. Hopefully, guys, I've answered this question well enough, and you guys have understood my answer to this question. That's been it from boy PSG. Hopefully, guys have enjoyed this video. And as usual, allez Paris.